We're going to take a look at how to build that of the HTML checkboxes in this video, and we worked on that of the radio buttons before, but we're going to take a look at checkboxes right here. And with checkboxes, you can actually select multiple items or multiple choices in a web page. Let's say something like skills, you can select maybe if you have HTML, CSS, and something like JavaScript skill. You can actually select them at a go in a web page. But when we worked on that of the radio buttons, you can only select one thing at a time. Maybe they tell you to select something like your gender. If you're a male, you can actually be a female at the same time. All right, so I want to show you how to actually implement that in HTML right now without wasting much time. So let's dive right in and see how that is actually created. We worked with radio buttons in the last video that we did about HTML input forms, and we're going to proceed to the next one, and this is probably going to be what we call checkboxes in HTML in this video, and we're going to do that in this particular video. So I do have like a boilerplate of the HTML page that I want to use, and I do just basically have a title in here, and within the form body right here I only have a submit button, and then I do have my opening tag and the closing tag of my form. All right, so if I open this up right now in my browser, you're going to notice we have nothing in the browser except that we do have a title up here and then a submit button. So what we want to do right here is to implement the checkbox right here. So to do that, I'm going to just say inputs, and to get the check mark on this particular HTML, we use this that is actually called a checkbox, and we can go ahead, if we want to add something like a value in here, we can do that. Maybe go ahead and just maybe call this something like HTML, and on the outside right here, however, I just basically want to save this in here. If I save this and I run this or refresh my browser, we're going to see that we're going to have a checkbox right here, but we wouldn't actually have a text that it kind of shows what that is actually mean. All right, so if you want to have a text, you can just put that on the outside right here. You can do something like HTML, and if you save the changes, and I basically would even like to have something like a break line in here. All right, so if I save the changes right here and I refresh my browser right here, you're going to see that we do have something of that nature, and I want to like basically copy this right here and maybe paste that on a few more lines. So I'm going to change this to something like CSS and CSS right here, and change this one to maybe something like JavaScript. And you can also change right here to JavaScript. All right, so if you want to make use of something of this nature, it's completely fine. I'm going to just basically throw in one more break line in here to move the submit button a little bit down. So if we refresh here, you see that we do have some checkboxes right here, and if you want to select them, you can actually select them, and if you want to unselect them, you can also unselect them. All right, so it's pretty simple, right? And there are some situations where you may not even want to write it the way that I wrote it here. So I've seen quite a lot of people maybe wrapping this up with something like a label. So if you want to do that, you can also do that. So if I do label right here and then do label right here, so this is going to be label, and we can do the same thing. So what I want to do is just copy this, and I want to just basically wrap that around all of this. I think we wouldn't even actually need all this break line anymore. We could actually need that anyway. So I'm going to just create a space in here, and then make sure I introduce / in here. And then for the last one in here, I'm going to just go ahead and then introduce that right here. And I think I do need to put that just before that break line. All right, so introduce a / and then save the changes. And I've seen a lot of people do it this way, and it's still syntactically correct. So if we refresh that on our browser, you see that we still have basically the same thing at this particular place right here. So that's just what it is, and I hope that you guys kind of understand that. At a later time, we are going to actually take a look at how we can actually process things that are actually found in a checkbox like this. All right, because if you submit this, if you try to submit this is actually going to come up in the form of an array. All right, so because if we check, I think we're missing one attribute right here. We need to have something like a name, and let's call this something like skill, and we basically need to like have this on every single line on this page. All right, so we need to also have that within this particular input, and then save the changes. Of course, if you refresh, you wouldn't actually see any serious changes right here, but it's actually something really very crucial because of when you are going to actually be processing the input that you get right here. Because if you try to submit this in your browser, it tries to like send all of this input that you have right here in form of an array, and then processing that, you need to use a different approach to be able to process what is being gotten right here. So if you want people to be able to select multiple choices in your website, you can use something like checkmark. We worked with that of the radio buttons, which can only select just one item at a time. So now we are just working on what is actually called a checkboxes, where you can actually select multiple choices right here. and then you can go ahead and hit on submit to submit that. Of course, we do not actually have our processing page open, but this is just basically how to do this, guys, and I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.